So this is a, boy, wow, tough week for me, and a good week. And so I've just been asking God, just make me brave. So my son is getting ready to move a long way away. And I've had all these years with him, and we've had years with Maddie too, and she's been part of our family. And so if you don't mind, I hate being emotional in front of people. But this is kind of like my last word to him. I know, right? It's just a phone call. Thank you. Got to get it real. Yeah. Yeah, but this is my last opportunity to really preach at him, perhaps for some years to come. And God's taken him out to do great things. So proud of him. I'm so grateful for him. So today, I'm just really talking to an audience of one. I'm talking to a Christian. And you know what? You can include yourself. What's so amazing about your grace? I've been listening to a book called Dominion by Tom Holland, a wonderful historian. A man who has, for many years, been a passionate agnostic, potentially even an atheist. He had an existential crisis as he was studying for this book, Dominion. He always imagined himself to be the sort of thought descendant, the inheritor of Greco-Roman culture. That's where he looked for inspiration and greatness. But the more he poured himself into studying Greco-Roman culture, the more he realized that he had nothing in common, very little in common with this culture, and that he had to look elsewhere for the things he cared about most deeply and treasured most passionately. And his search narrowed down to Christianity, and through Christianity to the person of Jesus and Paul. He describes Paul as a depth charge in the Greco-Roman world. A revolutionary so great that the implications of his revolution are now taken for granted. You can't imagine how different the Roman world was. The Roman world had intuitions and values diametrically opposed to almost everything you care about and believe today, even if you're not a believer in Jesus. The Roman world was built on the cross, but not like Christianity is built on the cross. It was built on subjugating people, destroying their cultures, enslaving them, killing them, and forcing them to serve Rome with the threat of the cross always behind them. Always behind them. Rome was built on crosses. Julius Caesar. You all know Julius Caesar? He's a guy. Well, you didn't meet him. Julius Caesar, one of the great conquerors of Rome. When he had his triumph, which is that royal parade, when he came back into Rome, his big celebration was that he believed he had killed at least 1 million Gauls and enslaved 1 million more. And people didn't think that was something to be ashamed of. They had billboards out there celebrating the fact that they had won this incredible victory over the Gauls. He was merciless. The idea in Rome was that a free man could have sexual relations with anyone he wanted, any way he wanted. And out of that came oppression and cruelty and abuse that shocks our senses today. The weak and the powerless had no recourse. If a master saw anything about a slave that finally displeased him enough he was done with him, he could send him out without any kind of recourse, without any kind of legal recourse, to be crucified outside the equestrian gate. up on the hill. They hung there like billboards. And when they had finished dying, there were always birds circling, always circling, even attacking their eyes and bodies before they had died. Rome was built on that kind of terrorism. It was an apex predator like the world had never seen. And into that world came a revolution like the world had never seen. They would take the bodies of those slaves and drag them away from crosses with meat hooks to throw them into ditches and declare them memoriae damnatio, their memory damned to ignominy, to being forgotten. Rome was built on that. And into that comes Christianity. The unlikeliest revolution in the unlikeliest place was so successful that according to Tom Holland, we treat its results as obvious and inevitable. When he talks about revolutions, he says the only revolutions that we remember are the ones that are either incomplete or unsuccessful. We remember the French Revolution, incomplete and largely unsuccessful. We think of the Russian Revolution, incomplete, somewhat unsuccessful. American Revolution, kind of fading a little bit. But you know, the Christian Revolution, completely forgotten. It was so successful that today we assume its outcome as inevitable. But these outcomes of the world's greatest revolution were neither obvious nor inevitable, and they could be lost if we lose their originating, transformative source of power. We could lose it. If you assume it will always be there, or if you think it's always been there, you're wrong. We could lose it potentially. What is that source of power? Christ crucified. Jesus Christ crucified. The cross of Christ redefined. His followers transformed by an unimaginable grace that flows from the cross. The cross, the foundation of Roman life, once stood as the power of the oppressor over the oppressed. The legitimate right of the powerful to grind the weak into oblivion, to torture them on billboards of death. It said, follow what we tell you and do as we say and give us what we want or else. And yet the cross has been radically defined in ways that would absolutely stun and befuddle a Roman mind. Today the cross is a symbol of the weak in triumph. It is a symbol of the last being the greatest. It is a symbol of sacrifice being the foundation stone of glory. The cross has been completely inverted in the world today from what it once stood for in the world of Rome. And that revolution was happening, that revolution of the cross was happening when Peter wrote. It was so powerful. It's an amazing grace that forms Christ's followers into powerful, socially radical sources of amazing grace. Anyone who has experienced the cross, legitimately experiences the cross, becomes a conduit of its power. Anyone who has experienced and received the gift of Calvary becomes a conduit for its power. If we are not conduits for its power, we have not experienced the transformation that comes from the cross. In the cross, there is a new kingdom culture and an instrument of theosis. And you know that's my new favorite word, theosis. We'll come back to it again. But first, kingdom culture. What do I mean by a kingdom culture? Everything that we see today has been transformed by the cross. Let's think about society. If you believe in the universal rights of all men and women and children and ethnicities, that comes from the cross. That comes from Christianity. That is not the assumption of Rome. In fact, it's interesting, if you kind of want to understand what Rome was like, there was an effort to have a revolutionary revival of the Roman ethics. It's called Nazism. Fascism is the most radical attempt in history to try to reverse the cross back to what it stood for before Christianity. It is the right of the powerful to oppress the weak. It flows out of the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche, the 19th century philosopher, who found the cross so disgusting. He said that the great man had been reduced to some kind of servile, monkish wimp. And what needed to be destroyed was the cross and Christianity and all the ethics of Christianity, and what needed to go back to the throne was the strongest ruling over the weak. No longer good versus evil. It was strong versus weak. That's why he wrote his book, Beyond Good and Evil. Beyond Good and Evil. And thus spoke Zarathustra, just to be nerdy with you. This kingdom culture is radically breaking into the world during this time that we're looking at here. It's radically breaking in. And it's going to transform Rome thoroughly. It's going to give us all of our ethics, universal human dignity, universal call not to oppress peoples, but to try to lift them, to go to the weak and the needy and the broken and lift them. That is the call of Christianity. If you hear that in your culture, that's where it came from. There. The cross is also a source of theosis. What is theosis? The idea that God has come and made himself human so that we can become connected to Christ and experience a transfusion and a transformation where we begin to become partakers of the divine. As Christ has partaken of humanity in our brokenness, we become partakers of his divinity, in his wholeness. That's theosis. And we're going to be looking today at some practical ways that theosis is breaking into society. When you look at society and you see the transformation from the predatory culture of Rome, you're experiencing a movement towards theosis. It is God transfusing us with the divine nature, with his values, with his intuitions. So take a look at this, because I don't want you just to believe me on this. Look at 2 Peter chapter 1, verses 3 and 4. It's going to be right up here. Look at this. This is what he's talking about. He says, by his divine power, God has given us everything we need for living a godly life. We have received all of this by coming to know him, the one who called us to himself by means of his marvelous glory and excellence. Before you leave that, when he talks about coming to know him, it means that you have gnosis with him. Gnosis. Gnosis is not just knowing about somebody, but being intimately connected so that you're altered, inextricably altered by the one you're connected to. And because of his glory and excellence, he has given us great and precious promises. And we're like, what are those promises? What are you offering us? He says, these are promises that enable you to, listen to this, that enable you to share his divine nature. We just blow past that. We don't think about it. To share his divine nature. It begins in the individual. It works out to the family. It goes beyond the family to the community, through the community into the world. It radically shifted the nature of Rome. And it can do it again today. Our calling from God is to become infused, partakers of the divine nature. To share his divine nature. Think about that. Just say it for a second to yourself. I'm called by God to come to a place where I share his divine nature. In what sense? In the sense that he shared our human nature, I, through him, am now called to share in his divine nature. I told you last week, this is not what we're doing to try to get saved. You'll never feel like you've arrived if that's your goal. We have been saved for this, not saved by this. We've been saved for this. Christian, as you go into the world, son, you're called to transport the presence of Christ. You're supposed to be transformed into the divine nature so that the people around you will be transforming through the conduit of grace coming through your life. The Air Force is a broken place. There's hedonism, there's selfishness, and there's a quest for power. Christ sends you for this, to be this, and to bring this. Our world's as broken as Rome. Maybe not as visibly broken, but at our core we are still just as broken. And into that brokenness, God sends you. And each one of us, everyone who is called a Christian, we are to become sharers of the divine nature and escape the world's corruption caused by human desires. Everything that humans desire finds its apex in Rome. Pride, they worshiped pride. Self-exaltation, they thought it was great. Power at all cost. Prestige, popularity, plunder, all of it was good. Leave that behind and take the cross in all of its glory as the emblem of God's mechanism in giving us access to his divine nature. Live out the cross. In Peter, we see that there are 4 powerful agents of grace and 4 primary witnesses to grace. We're going to get into it right away. Who are the 4 primary agents of grace? Not who you would think. They are powerful slaves, prayerful wives, patient husbands, a passionate community. That's what God calls to be the agents of this new kingdom culture founded on grace. That's what God calls to be the leavening force of theosis in the world where we see transformation. And these are not the people you will have looked at from Roman culture and said, oh yeah, of course that's who God would use. Think about who he's using. Powerful slaves, prayerful wives, patient husbands, a passionate community of faith. That's not where Romans looked for power and change. These were the ones they looked down on. In fact, listen to this. I want you to hear how Romans described the way they saw women and slaves and others. Listen, for instance, to Thallus, who was a popular figure in Rome. Thallus was from around 600 BC. He had been a Greek, Thallus of Miletus, which is just south of Ephesus. He said this. He said, there are 3 attributes for which I am grateful to fortune. And when he says fortune, he's speaking of a god, the god fortune. I'm thankful for these 3 things. That I was born first human and not beast. Second, man and not woman. And third, Greek and not barbarian. That was his attitude. And what he meant by that was, you can do anything you want to a beast. I'm glad I'm not one of those. I'm a human. And I'm glad that I'm not a woman. I'm a man. Women are second rate. So you would never listen in this culture for women to rise up and be a source of power. But Peter's going to say they are. And when he says Greek and not barbarian, what he means by that is I am in the position to oppress and control. I am destined for greatness and power and not for victimhood and oppression. That's the world. Listen to this from Celsius. Celsius, pardon me. Celsius is a temperature, I know. Celsius, who was writing in the 2nd century AD, so somewhere between 100 and 200 AD, against the Christians. He was the most passionate hater of Christians, and he's upholding Roman culture here. And he says, Christians show that they want and are able to convince only the foolish, dishonorable, and stupid. Only slaves, women, and little children. It was not a compliment. That's the very source of changing agency that God appoints. He makes fun of the slaves, the wives, the wimps, and the oppressed. And God says those will be the very sources of changing the world in the greatest revolution. The agents of grace are the ones Celsus mocked. Powerful slaves, prayerful wives, patient husbands, passionate community. And there's 4 witnesses of this theosis. There's 4 witnesses of this culture transformation. And they're the cruel masters, the callous husbands, the crushed wives, and the cold culture. All of those are the witnesses of the change. Okay, let's go and break it down. Let's go from verse 7. This is 1 Peter chapter 3. We're starting in verse 7, and we're going to read all the way through verse 14. Here it goes. In the same way, you husbands, Christian, must give honor to your wives, Maddie. Treat your wife, Maddie, with am I being too pointed, Christian? People are like, do you ever preach at people? Yeah, sometimes. Treat your wife with understanding as you live together. She may be weaker than you, but she is your equal partner in God's gift of new life. Treat her as you should, so your prayers will not be hindered. Finally, all of you should be of one mind. Sympathize with each other. Love each other as brothers and sisters. Be tender-hearted and keep a humble attitude. Don't repay evil for evil. Don't retaliate with insults when people insult you. Instead, pay them back with a blessing. That is what God has called you to do. And he will grant you his blessing, for the scriptures say, if you want to enjoy life and see many happy days, keep your tongue from speaking evil and your lips from telling lies. Turn away from evil and do good. Search for peace and work to maintain it. The eyes of the Lord watch over those who do right, and his ears are open to their prayers. But the Lord turns his face against those who do evil. Now, who will want to harm you if you are eager to do good? But even if you suffer for doing what is right, God will reward you for it. So don't worry or be afraid of their threats. This is God's word. Give me one moment. I told you it started off with slaves. We saw that before. Slaves, obey your masters. Not because God was endorsing slavery. He was planning to end slavery through the slaves. He was going to have them so powerfully blow their masters' minds with their faithfulness, with their kindness, and with their capacity for service that it would break their masters' hearts. The power of Christianity entered in through the slaves to the masters. It didn't come from masters to the slaves. It came from slaves to the masters. Serve well. We already looked at that. Then we saw last week where it talked about wives being an agent of change in their husbands' lives. Without a word, just by their holy, precious conduct. They were changing their husbands. What is that? An agent of theosis. An agent of bringing the divine presence of God into their marriages. You would think if it came in at all, it would come in through the guys. Did you get this? It came in through the wives. The weaker. The one that everyone had overlooked. She would be the agent of change. And now it comes down to these patient husbands. It says right down here in verse 7, we just saw it. Go back to verse 7 with me if you don't mind. In the same way, and when he says in the same way, homois, it's an idea doing in like manner, exactly the same. So women were called to be submitting themselves to the well-being of their husbands. Now husbands are told, if you're a believer, submit yourself to the well-being and the upbuilding and the blessing of your wife. That's your call. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to represent Christ to her. Our goal in Christian marriage is to try to outdo each other with grace, with mercy, with mutual submission. Recently, I've realized that means I need to take the lead on the dishes. You know how we used to do it as guys. I am good at outweighing the dish problem. I'm just like, it's bad, but if I wait just a little longer, she'll probably do it. They're like, sounds like my husband. No, we're supposed to outdo each other in practical grace in our families. Husbands, beat your wife to doing the right thing. But that did not sound good. Sometimes it sounds better in the head. Okay. Get there first. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay. Treat husbands in the same way. You husbands must give honor to your wives. Honor her. That's not what Roman culture thought. That's the opposite of what Roman culture thought. You heard what Roman culture thought. Thank God you weren't her. Honor your wife. Son, as you go out there, one of the greatest ways that you will show Christ to your family and to your wife and to your community is the way that you honor her. Honor Maddie. Honor. Give her glory when you talk to your friends. Never talk down about her. Always lift her up. Always speak of her in the highest regard as the greatest treasure you have received in your life next to Jesus. Christian husbands, are you listening? I'm not just talking to my son. One of the great transformative powers in culture and in the process of theosis is husbands honoring their wives. I have a friend who's here, and they would be offended if I called them out by name. I want to talk about something really cool that I saw this last week in honoring his wife. This guy loves to ski with me, and wife hadn't been feeling super well and didn't feel up to going skiing and wanted to go snowshoeing instead. If you are a downhill ripping skier like this guy, that's tough. That's going slow. That's going slow. And this guy loves me. He's like my mentor. I look up to him. We love being together. But he chose this week on the best powder day out there. Sorry to tell him that. I know he's like, really? Yeah, some of the best powder day. He chose to strap on the snowshoes and walk with his precious wife. God bless you. That's bringing Jesus into your relationship. I saw what you did. You did the right thing. Do you see where I'm looking? I'm trying to move my eyes. I'm so proud. I could burst with pride. That's what it's about. Sacrificially, lovingly, honoring with your time and with your words and with the way you treasure her, your wife. Honor her. That's the first step. It's transformative. Most of these husbands here would be talking toward or moving their witness into the lives of wives who didn't even share their faith. This is the inroad. Treat your wife with understanding as you live together. That's the next piece. So you first honor her. The second thing is, in terms of bringing this new culture, look how simple it starts. It's not something that starts with passing a law. It starts with how slaves treat their masters and how women treat their husbands and how husbands treat their wives. That was the foundation of the world's greatest revolution. It radically changed the most unchangeable culture in history. And it was the way that theosis was coming into the world. And it continues to be the best way today. Are you following what I'm laying down? So, live with them in understanding. Someone said that women's minds are like spaghetti and guys are like waffles. Do you know how that works? So we have different compartments, guys. We have different compartments. And as soon as I leave my work compartment, I am done with that. And I don't want to look back. And I have my entertainment compartment, and I have my personal time compartment, I have my skiing compartment, I have my teaching compartment, and I do that compartment really well when I'm in the compartment. Now, women's minds, not so much. It's kind of like spaghetti. It's all interwoven. It's all connected. You ever come home, guys, and your wife is like, just like, how about this question? The question I dread the most. So tell me about your day. And I'm like, I'm not in that compartment anymore. I haven't been there for like 25 minutes. I don't want to go back. Don't want to go back. Or she just like, how about this? She wants to tell you about all the spaghetti. You know what the kids did? And then they did this, and I'm talking to my mom, and I don't think she understands, and the job's hard, and she's going on, and you're just like, it's everywhere. Spaghetti. Have mercy. Please, no. Get in your compartment. And you know, it doesn't tell women to knock it off. It tells men to be understanding. Get used to the spaghetti. Sit down. We had a marriage counselor that encouraged us to sit down and for 20 minutes just say, I want to hear your heart. How great would that be if guys would just come and sit down, come into the door and sit down with your wife and just say to her, sweetheart, you know, for the next 20, 30 minutes or so, I just want to hear your heart. What's on your heart? What if you asked her to pour out the spaghetti? Hey, you got some spaghetti? You want to pour it on me? Pour it on me. Love to hear your spaghetti. Guys, you know, the world gets it when we have this kind of constant stress in our lives in husband and wife relationships. What if the cross was so powerful that we served each other in these practical ways? What if we really did beat her to the dishes? What if we did get the flowers on the table, guys? And not just, you know, for Valentine's, her birthday, and when we really screwed up, you know? It's like, that's what my wife is. What, did you really mess up? If your wife's wondering if you really messed up when you bring the flowers, you are messing up. We should really just pave the path for our wives in lives of sacrificial love. It is a practical expression of Christianity. It is at the power center of what brought theosis and what brought change and cultural reversal into the Roman world, and it can do it again today. Treat your wives with understanding as you live together. She may be weaker than you are. Yeah, I don't arm wrestle my wife. She actually had a reputation for beating guys at arm wrestling, and some of them never recovered from the experience. She may be, true story, she may be weaker than you are, but she is your equal partner in God's gift of new life. This is not a great translation of what it's talking about. It says that she may be a weaker vessel. The way he's talking about this is this. He's saying, look, husbands, as you're looking at your wife, Christians, you're looking at your wife, look at her as like a beautiful wine. Okay, we don't do wine. Different grape juice. A beautiful grape juice container. Okay. I'm a recovering Adventist. I don't know. We're still not sure. Okay. You don't look at the wine, at the wine container, the wine bottle and go, what a weak thing that is. You look at it and you say, wow, look at that beautiful, ornate thing. Bottle doesn't really do it right. In the old world, it was an ornate wine container. You look at it, you go, that is precious. Look what's in it. Look what's in the vessel. Treat it with care. Treat your wife as fragile as, no, that's not the right word, and not as fragile. Treat her as ornate. Treat her as beautiful. Treat her as to be protected, one to be protected. Treat her as something that is, in the most precious use of the word, fragile. Okay? Be careful how you carry her in your heart. Be careful how you speak of her. Be careful how you serve. Here's another way of looking at it, guys. Your wife's just not another dude. Don't treat her like a dude. Okay? I've got Josh back here. I treat him like a dude. He lives at our home. We went out and we're skiing in the lake chutes this last week. And the lake chutes are some of the most intense terrain at Breck. I'm like, yo, you want to do double black EX? He's like, yeah, I guess. If you think I can. I'm like, I don't know. Let's go find out. So we hiked up to the top of the lake chutes and we pulled up to the edge and our skis went over and it was just straight down. And Josh goes, and he pulls back and he says, is there another way? I'm like, dude, I don't know, man. We could look. So we went farther down. See, this is how you're not supposed to treat your wife. She's not a dude. And when we got to the, I'm like, oh, here's a good place to go. And he's like, you consider that good? I'm like, I'm doing it. Went in, and it's like, do not fall or you may die section, you know. And he comes in, and it's really like glassy, icy in where he comes. And he's gotten in there, and I see him stop, and he's contemplating, do I need help? I'm like, dude, just keep going down. Slide sideways, do something, don't be stuck there. And he's like, I'm not sure this is a good idea. I'm like, well, no, man, I guess I'm going to ski down. And so I skied away from him. I'm like, he'll figure it out. I mean, I think if he tomahawks it, he'll probably just slide out the bottom. He'll be good. He'll be good. He'll be good. This is exactly how you're not supposed to treat your wife. Okay? You're supposed to protect her. You don't need another dude in your life. You need to be there for her. And God will receive honor, and his praises will increase when he sees us treating our wives not like I just treated Josh. All right? Don't be like, suck it up, buttercups. Don't say that. We need to have a heart that covers our wives like Christ covered us. Protect her. Go the extra mile to make her feel safe, even though that's not how you've seen me drive. You drive that way. Treat your wife with understanding. Yeah, weaker, yeah, fragile, but she is your equal partner in God's gift of grace. You hear that? It's interesting. She is your equal partner in God's gift of new life. It's that word gift is charis, okay, the grace of life. She is an equal recipient of God's grace. So right there was the beginning of people recognizing, well, if God gives her the same grace he gives me, then God values her the same as he values me. That transformed the Roman world. Treat her as you should, so your prayers will not be hindered. If you don't, son, treat your wife in the way that we're talking about here, God will stop listening to you until you fix it. Your prayers will not reach him until your love reaches your wife. And that is true for all of us here today. Remember that our spiritual life is linked to our emotional life. The way we treat our loved ones is going to impact our access to the ear of God. All right. Let's wind this in. Finally, that's verse 1. Okay. All right, we're ready. Here comes the second half of the message. You know, I'm going to do what one great preacher said. You know, he said, look, I'm here to talk to two groups of people today, saints and sinners. And so he preached a long message. People would leave the church early. It was Dwight L. Moody. And so he got to the point where most people would leave, and he stopped and he said, okay, that concludes my thoughts to the saints. No, sorry, that concludes my thoughts to the sinners. You're free to leave. I will now address a few words to the saints. Okay, so if you're a sinner, you can go. The rest of this is for the saints. Okay, we'll go quickly. Finally, all of you should be of one mind. And it says, sympathize with each other. Love each other as brothers and sisters. Be tender-hearted and keep a humble attitude. Where we're looking at right now, this is looking at the way the community becomes transformative in society. And so here's what it means. When it says, first of all, be of one mind, it means that you have one commander, and we all acknowledge that. You have one goal. We all acknowledge that. And we have one method, and we all acknowledge that. And we have one body, and we're all committed to serving together with it. The one king, Jesus. The one goal, his kingdom. The one method, the grace that comes from the cross. The one body, the people of God, in unity. That's what we're called to be. We're supposed to be so transformed. It began in the family, and now it's transforming the entire spiritual community. And that community is going to transform the world. It says right here, first, sympathize with each other. Sympathize with each other. And that means together in pain. Sympathy is from two words, together, and the word pain. Pasco. Okay? So it means to share each other's pain. As we are a community of faith, we will transform the world when we share each other's pain. And when we share each other's pain, that leads us into being Philadelphia. It is to be brothers and sisters. That's the Greek word here. So as you share each other's pain, you'll come into this intense brotherhood, comradeship with each other. We've seen that happen at the academy. I see Ezra is sitting up here today. I suspect he knows it's your last week here at Grace. And like a good brother, he's here to support you. And you know why? Because you guys have sympathized with each other in pain. And now you're unbreakable as brothers. And then what comes out of that? Be tender-hearted. And in the Greek word here, what it means is that you have a good inward movement of your bowels and your inward parts. You know that kind of fluttery feeling you have in your stomach? It's where you viscerally love somebody. You genuinely love them. And it's activating. You see, it's playing out. Sharing each other's pain has led you to love each other. And loving each other makes you tender-hearted enough to drive up from the springs for hours to be there on an important day. And keep a humble attitude. This humble attitude. And you go, well, what does it mean to have a humble attitude? What does this humble attitude look like? This humble attitude means that you, in fact, I marked it down. That the word in the Greek says a deep sense of one's moral littleness and a modest view of one's importance. That's what it means to have a humble attitude, a deep sense of one's moral littleness and a modest view of one's importance. So what does that do? Here, how do I know if I have a humble attitude? Well, here's how you know. You won't repay evil for evil. Don't repay evil for evil. Don't retaliate with insults when people insult you. You know that you're not that important, and you're not trying to make yourself the center. You trust that to God, son. You're going to have that happen in your life. You're going to be treated with evil. Do not treat back with evil. You're going to be insulted. Do not insult back. Instead, see, there's something not to do, now there's something to do. Pay them back with blessing. And it comes from two words, you and logos. It means good words. Okay? That's where we get the word eulogy. It's the root word for eulogy, to eulogize. Who are you eulogizing? Who are you speaking well of? The Christian culture will take fire in the world when we speak well of the people who do not speak well of us. When we treat people with compassion who do not treat us with compassion. That's where that powerful revolution came from. That is what God has called you to do, and he will grant you his blessing. God has put you in the world to respond to evil with good, to respond to insult with blessing. That is your purpose, son. That is your destiny. For the scriptures say, if you want to enjoy life and see many happy days, here's some principles. Keep your tongue from speaking evil and your lips from telling lies. Turn away from evil and do good. And you know what it means to do good, son? Every day, in every way, you find in every opportunity the privilege of representing the person of Christ. To do good is to do as Christ would do. Better said, to do good is to do what Christ has done. To do good is to be an approximation of who Jesus has been to all of us, and specifically to you. Search for peace and work to maintain it. You're an agent of peace. The eyes of the Lord watch over those who do right, and his ears are open to their prayers. What is it that gives us the courage in a hostile world to live so magnanimously? We know that Jesus sees us. We know that he hears us. We know that he is conscious of us constantly. And that gives us the courage to boldly do what seems so contrary to a world of apex predators. You can only live this way if you are confident that God sees, listens, and celebrates that kind of honorable life. He says here, but the Lord turns his face against those who do evil. You don't have to hunt down everybody who mistreats you. God will deal with them in his own way, in his own time. Now, who will want to harm you if you are eager to do what is good? It's like here, he's saying if you're zealous, that's the actual word, eager. If you're filled with zeal to do good, nobody should want to give you a hard time for that. You'll probably have people who admire it. But he says, and in fact, that's the truth. Many people in the Roman world turned away from their wicked culture when they saw this kind of Christian life lived in front of them. Although he does admit that it can go the other way. But even if you suffer for doing what is right, God will reward you for it. So don't worry or be afraid of their threats. Don't be afraid. Okay. So I'm done. I have, for years, preached in your life. I have for years challenged you to be a man of God. And now, son, it is time to deploy. It is time to deploy. You are going to go into the world as a revolutionary counterculture in a hedonistic, prideful, self-absorbed culture. You are called to be different. You are called, son, to be an agent of the continuing revolution of God. You are called to be an instrument of theosis in a broken world that needs Christ. I challenge you to be that man. You're called to live out your faith in the way you lead your family. You're called to have a passionate focus on the cross. You're called to live a life of humility and compassion, even in the face of mistreatment and evil. You will face fire, but you have the Holy Spirit in you. And greater is he who is in you than he who is in the world. Christianity won once before, and it is about to do so in a grander way once again, through men who will live like this. I challenge you in the name of Jesus. I challenge each of us in the name of Jesus to take up the torch of that first revolution and carry it into another generation. In Jesus' name.